Hello, and welcome to our how-to videos. Today, we're going to show you how to do a texture repair, texture patch. Recently, I had a client who had about a 2x2 area in a textured ceiling that received some water damage, and they asked me to come by and take a look at it and go ahead and repair it for them. So what I'm going to do today is bring you along and walk you through the process. This is going to give you an opportunity to know what the full process is, as well as maybe attempt it for yourself. I certainly hope that I can give you that kind of advice. So why don't you come along with us? One of the worst things that you can do in a client's house or in your own home is drop some mud on the floor, not paying attention, step in it, and then track it all over the house. So what we want to do to avoid that is to simply lay down some floor covering all over, everywhere that we're going to be, so that we don't track mud all over the place. All right, well, we've put our drop cloths from the entryway to the work area, so let's get started. First, you'll see that I'm putting up a temporary dust partition. This is similar to a zip wall system. It consists of a couple of extension poles with some padded tops, as well as some visqueen. This allows you to create a room within a room and helps you contain the dust to the area that you're working and not let it go all over the room. If your contractor does not offer this system, please insist that he does. It helps you so that you have less cleanup after the fact, and it also helps him too, and it's simple. So after I've made a few measurements from some adjacent walls, what I'm going to do is use a level and draw some straight lines between those measurements. This helps me make sure that the area that I'm going to be removing is going to be square, because it's easier to cut drywall in a square pattern than anything else. You want to make sure that the area that you cut out is square. Next, what I'm going to do with a very sharp blade in my utility knife, you're going to want to score along the lines that you've cut out. This does a couple of things. It gives you a little bit of a cleaner cut when you use your keyhole saw to cut it out, and it also helps guide your keyhole saw cleanly along that cut. And here you can see I'm taking my keyhole saw and I'm beginning to cut the patch out. You'll also notice that I'm wearing a respirator, a double charcoal respirator. I can't impress upon you enough how important it is to wear respiratory protection while you're cutting out drywall. On one side of the patch, I cut the patch along the existing framing members. This allows me to be able to nail right to the framing members, but you can see on the other side of the patch, I do extend just a little bit beyond an existing framing member. So with this technique, what you do is you take a 1x4 piece of wood, cut a little bit wider than the area, you slide it up in there as I just did, flat against the existing drywall, and then you screw it through the existing drywall, careful not to screw through your fingers, and this gives you a sturdy nailer to what you call a nailer, so that you can screw your new drywall patch into. So now we're going to throw in just a little bit of insulation where the existing blow-in insulation might have been, and we're also going to secure the existing drywall around the patch so that we create good substrate conditions so that we can put our new drywall patch in and we know that there's just not going to be any movement or cracking. After we've cut our patch as well, what you always want to do when you cut drywall is rasp the edge so that you have a nice straight square edge. But you'll notice when you do that, in the circled area here, you get this little curl of paper. So take a nice sharp blade and a utility knife and just cut that curl of paper off. This avoids lines that develop later on, and it's just one of those things that the real professionals do. After you've prepped and cut your new drywall patch, go ahead and place it in the spot of the existing drywall patch where you need to install it. Be sure to use screws. They have a tendency to pop less later on. There's less movement. And use a screw gun with a drywall bit tip. After you're done with that, use a sanding pole, or as I've got here, a vacuum sander, which attaches to a shop vac, and sand the adjacent texture area down to as smooth as you can possibly get it. This will help blend your new texture into your old. This is one of the most important coats that many drywallers skip. This is what's called the pre-fill coat. What this does is it seals all the cracks, and it also gives you a flat surface to install your tape to. Now, after I've got the tape installed, which I will show you in another video, this is my first coat of the fill coat. This starts to build up the mud around the patch area so that I can start to get a smooth surface. You'll see that I've gone wider than the patch by 10 to 12 inches. This is pretty standard. Now, after I've got all my mud on, what I do, you can see here, is feathering the edges. That's just kind of cutting the edges, and I'll show you that again as well in another video upcoming. And after I've gone all around the entire patch, you can see that I'm choosing a broader knife. This is a 12-inch knife. And what I'm going to do is to start laying the mud down, not taking too much off, but just trying to leave as much mud as possible on. This helps make the patched area as level as possible. If you see imperfections, really don't worry too much about it, because this is your first coat. You're going to be putting on at least one more coat, most likely 2 more coats, and in the case of this patch here, I put on 4 more coats. Don't worry if you see imperfections. You can sand in between coats and you have an opportunity to make it smooth, and just put on another coat later. After you've got your first coat on, or your second coat on, whatever it may be, you can see that I'm putting on mud in the opposite direction that I put it on before. This is important because it helps you fill voids that you might have missed before. I'll have to explain this to you in another video, but this helps you cross-fill areas that might be low and high, so that just helps ensure that your final patch is nice and level all the way through. Once you get your mud on, again, use a broad knife and just flatten everything out. Now this is a second coat. Again, don't be afraid to leave imperfections in your mud. You'll have an opportunity to fix that later as you sand and recoat. If you're attempting to do these repairs yourself, I want to encourage you to use as many coats as necessary. There's nothing to gain or lose by trying to get a patch done or a repair done in one coat. Not even the professionals do that. Typically it's 3 coats, sometimes it's more. It's as many as it needs to get it right. So apply a coat, let it dry, sand it down, apply another coat, apply a third coat, apply a fourth coat, whatever you have to do so that you make sure that it looks right and that it reduces the amount of work that you have to do. After you've got all your mud on and everything's nice and dry, take an opportunity to sand the edges. You'll notice I'm wearing a respirator. I can't stress how important that is. But you'll sand the edges of the new drywall mud so that it blends into the old. And then after that, take a wet sponge and further blend the new drywall mud into the old. You'll be able to see here on the left-hand side a sanded edge, and on the right-hand side a non-sanded edge. And now the tools. You can use a variety of texture brushes. I've got 2 pictured here. They're available at any drywall supply store. You'll also need a 1-inch nap roller, a roller frame, and 2 extension poles.